Despite being part of one of the oldest gaming franchises in history, Castlevania Symphony of the Night was never really a game that I had an opportunity to play as a kid. I had a Nintendo 64 and then later on a GameCube, but the PlayStation was something that I didn't get until pretty recently. At this point, Konami had effectively abandoned Castlevania, but not entirely.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
To be honest, Castlevania as a series never really stuck out to me. I knew that it was a good series. Everybody had always told me that it was a good series, but I just never found the motivation to pick it up. But you know, as you get older, your opinions change. You alter your views. Your horizons expand a little bit. This better not awaken anything in me. So, with my interest piqued, I decided to do a little bit of research to see which one of the titles out of this series' mini-titles I should play first. Because I don't want to choose one just arbitrarily, And after a long period of deliberation, I ultimately decided to play Symphony of the Night. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a 2D action-adventure role-playing game for the original PlayStation that was developed and published by Konami in the year 1997. There's also a Sega Saturn version that was only released in Japan the following year, and there have been a few re-releases in the years since. The game was directed and produced by Toru Hagihara, with Koji Igarashi serving as assistant director and scenario writer. Under the leadership of these two, it was decided pretty early on that the game would be a bold departure from the franchise norms thus far, taking inspiration from Nintendo titles like The Legend of Zelda and Metroid, with the intention of introducing their light RPG mechanics and focus on open-world exploration into the Castlevania series. And you know what they say, stealing one idea, that's plagiarism. Stealing two ideas and combining them? Now that's art. It may not seem like much, but it was a pretty big deal at the time. The series had become what it was by following a set formula, and there were legitimate concerns that breaking nearly every Castlevania convention thus far might be a bit of a gamble. Adding to that anxiety was the fact that this team had never developed a game for the PlayStation. In fact, the PlayStation was probably the worst platform to develop a 2D game for at the time. And to top all that off, in this game, you don't even save a girl, you save a boy! We don't save boys around here. This is 1997. If we can't save the babes, we might as well be playing Myst. What the fuck am I saying? That's so stupid. Just as a warning, I'm about to talk a lot about the game's story, so if spoilers from a game that was released in 1997 bother you, this video's probably not for you, man. But that's okay. I get it. I still haven't finished Half-Life 2, and if someone told me what happens in that series, I would be just so incredibly salty. The game starts off with you playing as Richter Belmont during his battle with Dracula from the previous game, Rondo of Blood. It may sound daunting that Dracula is the opening act here, but you are, for all intents and purposes, invincible during this fight. Once the flashback sequence is completed, you're shown a text scroll that sets up the plot going forward. To save you from having to pause and read all this, I'll just bring you up to speed. You are Adrian Fahrenheit Tepesh, the half-vampire son of vampire lord Dracula Vlad Tepesh and a human woman named Lisa. Following the execution of your mother for the crime of being married to Dracula, you kind of question your dad's decision to slaughter those responsible for some reason, so you take it upon yourself to defend the people that just killed your mother. I mean, okay. In a move that just really cements your misplaced teenage rebellion, you decide to change your name. Only it's your dad's name, spelled backwards, because I'm 14 and this is wicked deep. You team up with Trevor Belmont and his groupies to help assassinate your father, and after absolutely owning your dad in a totally fair 4-on-1 fight, you come to realize that your mother is dead because you didn't do anything to save her, and you just killed your dad, so maybe you're not the best goth boy. You decide to crawl into a crypt somewhere with the intention of sleeping for the rest of eternity, Because Netflix is like 500 years away. Fast forward a few hundred years, and you're awakened by the re-emergence of Dracula's castle, and immediately feel the need to investigate because...
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
What is a man?
After getting your AirPods stolen by Undertaker over here, a large section of the castle opens up for you to explore. And it's beautiful. The art direction in Symphony of the Night is amazing. By now I've played a few other Castlevania games that came before and after this one, and none of them capture the same magic when it comes to the presentation, in my opinion. The aesthetic hits a weird spot in my brain. The surreal architecture, the gothic vibes, and the sense of foreboding all clash with each other, but somehow it just works. Just look at this and tell me it doesn't exude an atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. Every room of the castle evokes a feeling that you're only seeing a fraction of what's going on here. The castle feels like a character unto itself, and you just never know what to expect from it. I get big Halloween B-movie energy from this game, and I love it. When I think about this game, I picture booting it up on a breezy autumn evening with the windows open and some of those really nice fall-scented candles that your aunt gave you for Christmas last year burning in the background. That's my Castlevania. So, after a while, you run into a woman named Maria.
Wait a moment. You seem human, and yet, what do you here? Not the talkative type, I can see.
If she breathes!
It turns out that she's a friend of Richter Belmont. He went missing recently, and she figured the big fuck-off castle was a good place to start looking for him, which is a pretty good assumption in my opinion. The world of Castlevania is lousy with vampire hunters, to the degree that you'd expect every appearance of Dracula's castle to turn into Burning Man for these dudes. Maria had helped Richter defeat Dracula 4 years ago, but found that the castle's layout had radically changed since then. Unable to find Richter, she asks Paleboy over here to help find him. About here you start acquiring new abilities that let you access more of the castle, allowing you to find more powerful weapons and battle the bosses that are scattered around the different areas. The boss fights in this game are easily the best part. They all have unique gimmicks that require a different strategy to overcome. I mean, just look at this guy. He's just chilling at his dining room table 1 minute, and then the situation escalates to this. You can't tell me that's not awesome. As fun as the boss fights are, they wouldn't be nearly as good if the controls weren't so tight and responsive. The movement plays so perfectly into the combat, never once in my multitude of playthroughs did I ever feel like death was due to the controls. It was always because I was an idiot. Just when you feel like you have it mastered, you'll be met with a new obstacle you've never seen before. Often these are overcome by utilizing relics. These allow Alucard to transform, and in turn give him new movement abilities like flight, turning into mist, and most importantly, good boy mode. These abilities can be upgraded by finding more relics hidden around the castle, and they give you multiple options when confronting obstacles. On top of this, there are countless weapons, shields, armors, accessory items that allow you to choose what type of combat style you enjoy the most. Want a sword in one hand and a shield in the other? You can do that. You want to Bruce Lee a demon to death with nunchucks? Okay. You've always wanted to punch a giant dog. Weird, but it is possible. With all of these tools at your disposal, there is no wrong way to play this game. You're free to develop your own style, and that's really important in a game like this. Sadly, the RPG mechanics add very little to this experience. As far as RPG systems go, this one's pretty basic. Alucard has 4 different stats that determine his attack strength, defense, magic ability, and luck. These stats can be increased by gaining experience through combat, wearing stat-altering equipment, and consuming stat-boosting items. On paper, this sounds okay, but when it's put into action, you barely even notice that it's there. When an RPG system's working well, you look forward to every level up because you get a tangible reward for your effort. You see your character making progress, and you feel it. But here, all you get is an animation and a tiny boost in a random stat, and you would be hard-pressed to tell if it made a difference at all. The worst part is that it's not bad. It doesn't serve to make the game worse, but it doesn't make it better either. And I get it, it's probably really hard to balance something like this if you've never done it before. I know I couldn't do any better, but it just feels a little underdeveloped. Later games in the series would take this system and expand upon it, making it more integral to the gameplay, but here it just feels vestigial. Eventually you find Richter, and it would seem he's responsible for the castle's reappearance. Upon hearing this, Maria refuses to believe it.
That can't be true! You're wrong! I must go now!
From this point, you have two options. You can honor Maria's request, break out your handy-dandy notebook and start searching the castle for clues, or you can commit self-defense and kill Richter. Killing Richter is the quickest way to end the game, but it will net you the bad ending.
How is Richter?
'Tis best you pray for the soul of your friend.
I see. Oh well.
If you're a good detective and solve the case, you discover that Richter was being controlled by this dude the whole time.
You've defeated me, but all is not yet lost.
I guess he was using Richter to resurrect Dracula somehow? Look, I don't really understand why, but we're like 6 hours deep into the plot here, so just roll with it. With the ruse uncovered, Shaft falls back to Dracula's real castle that's floating in the sky for reasons. This new castle comes complete with new items, new enemies, and much higher difficulty. Just look at this bullshit. How are you supposed to deal with all that? As cool as that all sounds, the new castle is just the old castle that got turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute. Oh, it's upside down like a bat. I get it. This is definitely the weakest part of the game. More gameplay is usually good, but the new area is literally just a carbon copy of the first castle, only inverted. To make matters worse, you are given absolutely no direction as to where to go from here. To beat the game, you have to fight 5 bosses to collect key items that unlock the final boss room. But you're never told this. You're just left to bumble around and hope you figure it out, or look up a walkthrough, and that sucks. I mean, would it have been so difficult for Richter to say something? I mean, it only makes sense that he would have seen something. There's no way he doesn't know where those keys are. There's no way he doesn't know how this castle works. But they just leave, and you're left with nothing. And it feels intentional, too. It's almost like they had some sort of a hotline that you could call that charged you like $3 a minute, and on that hotline you could get advice on how to beat their games. Despite being the weakest part of the game, the inverted castle definitely has the best boss fights. I won't spoil them, but I have to mention my favorite one, and that's when you fight the evil doppelgangers of Trevor Belmont, Sifa, and Grant from Castlevania 3. It's not the hardest fight in the game, but the idea of Alucard having to fight evil copies of his former friends from 400 years ago is just such a cool concept. As good as it is, Alucard doesn't even comment on it after the battle is done. These were, as far as anybody knew at the time, the only people Alucard considered friends. How would he deal with the reality that he's immortal, and all of his mortal friends will eventually die? Seemingly most, if not all, of the immortal beings in this universe are evil, so what is he left with? The game's plot is no Citizen Kane, but I feel like not addressing this at all was such a missed opportunity. Anyway, back to the story. Once you've managed to collect all 5 pieces of the Exodia, you get to duel with Shaft. You think you got an easy dub lined up, right? But you brick and he FTKs your ass, managing to complete the resurrection, leaving Alucard to fight his father, again. Alucard might be a patricidal maniac, you guys. The boss fight with Dracula is kind of a joke when compared to the other boss fights in the game. If you were even halfway invested in exploring before this point, you'll have a plethora of weapons and abilities, and Dracula will fall pretty quickly.
How is it that I've been so defeated?
You have been doomed ever since you lost the ability to love.
It's kind of a bummer given how good most of the other bosses were, but, I mean, if you were fighting an immortal being who could turn into poisonous gas on command, you wouldn't stand much of a chance either. With Dracula defeated, one of 2 possible endings will play. If you didn't explore both castles thoroughly, Alucard will decide to go back to his crypt, leaving behind a clearly interested Maria.
'Twould be best for this world if I were to disappear forever.
Alucard?
Don't you want to go after him, Maria?
No, it's best this way.
But if you were diligent in your exploration, Maria will decide to chase after him, thus leading to the events of a sequel of sorts in the form of a Japanese radio drama titled Nocturne of Recollection, which depicts Maria and Alucard's life together after the end of the game, and I listened to it. Look man, I don't know how canon this radio drama thing is to the series, but if Alucard and Lyudmil shipping isn't a thing, the fan base is sleeping on some really good shit. In the end, I've only scratched the surface of what this game has to offer. I could go on for hours about the hidden rooms, the secret button combo attacks, the obscure environment interactions, but then you'd be deprived of the joy I felt when discovering them for myself. Of course, no game is perfect. The story here is not very good, the second half of the game is way worse than the first half of the game, and the role-playing aspect of this game is really underdeveloped. The later games in the series improve on all of these aspects, but they're just not Symphony of the Night. This game has a magic quality that's impossible to define, and that's why it endures. And it also has a JoJo reference. I'm biased towards this game, so my opinion on this may be trash. I mean, it probably is trash. In no way should my opinion on anything, really, be taken as objective and well-constructed criticism. But I will say that after I played Symphony of the Night, it made me want to play the other games in the series. And when a game can do that, it's probably doing something right. If you've never played a Metroidvania title before, this one's a pretty good place to start.